Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Yeah, glad to have you here.
You are here because, well, you have that itch, that drive to not just, skim the surface of a topic, but to really understand how things work under the hood.
You want the actual insights.
Right, the insights without the massive information overload. And that is exactly what we are going to deliver today.
Oh, absolutely.
Because today we are looking at a really highly concentrated single source.
Yeah, it's not a 300-page book we're talking about here.
No, and it's not some sprawling academic paper either. It is a single, incredibly dense framework diagram.
From the year 2020.
Exactly. The title of this document is Malaysia as a Producer Nation.
Which is such a bold title.
It is. It carries the copyright of Dr. Mazlan Abbas, and it features the branding for Favriat. And interestingly enough, it actually includes a QR code linking straight out to a YouTube video right there on the page.
Right, so it's a very modern, very digital-first kind of artifact?
Yeah, very much so. But the concepts embedded in its flowchart, they are totally universal to any economy that's trying to move up the value chain.
Universal and honestly quite urgent.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to completely decode this specific blueprint.
Because it really is a blueprint.
It is. What this diagram represents is a visual roadmap outlining exactly how a country, specifically Malaysia in the context of this document, can transition. Moving from simply being a consumer of imported goods and technologies to becoming a true self-sustaining producer nation.
What's fascinating here is that when you hear a phrase like producer nation, your mind almost inevitably jumps to the physical infrastructure.
Oh, sure. Factories, right.
Exactly. You think of massive factories, assembly lines, shipping containers, raw materials being extracted from the ground.
The heavy industry stuff.
Right. But this 2020 framework, it completely bypasses that.
Which is wild.
It is. It doesn't start with the heavy machinery of physical production at all. Instead, it reveals this deeply complex, entirely human ecosystem of distinct institutional players.
It maps out three very specific domains.
Yeah, the university, the industry, and the market.
And more importantly than just listing them, it maps the incredibly delicate, often counterintuitive feedback loops and communication lines between them.
Which absolutely must connect if any meaningful production is ever going to materialize.
And that framing completely shifts how you have to look at economic development. It presents production as a psychological and structural challenge.
Not a geographic or resource-based one.
Exactly. It's not just about having the coal or the steel. The diagram visualizes this by setting up three distinct color-coded pillars at the very top of the framework.
Representing those core players we just mentioned.
Right. So let's look at the first pillar. It's a yellow box, simply labeled university.
Simple enough.
But the crucial part is the text sitting right above it, which defines its primary drivers and outputs. And those are publications and knowledge.
When you look at that, it perfectly encapsulates the classic pure academic pursuit.
It really does. The overarching goal of the university, according to this framework, isn't to build a commercial product.
No, not at all.
It's learning for the sake of learning.
Yeah.
It's conducting fundamental research, making discoveries about how the physical world works, and then sharing that foundational knowledge with the global community.
Through peer-reviewed publications.
Right.
And we should pause here and just consider the specific incentive structure of that yellow box.
Because it's unique.
Very. It is driven by discovery and validation.
Yeah.
Which means it is fundamentally not driven by speed.
Oh, definitely not.
Deep, rigorous academic research requires a timeline that is entirely its own. Researchers have to run experiments, they have to analyze anomalies.
Subject their findings to intense peer review.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And eventually publish. The currency of the university pillar is pure knowledge. And its ultimate validation is adding a new, verifiable truth to the academic record.
The framework acknowledges that this is a vital, necessary function.
It also isolates it.
Which sets up a massive conceptual collision when we move to the second pillar in the diagram.
The red box.
Yes. Right next to the university is a red box labeled industry. And the bullet points defining the industry's drivers are a complete 180-degree departure from the academic model.
Totally different worlds.
The drivers here are time to market and revenue.
Boom. Just like that, we are abruptly pulled out of the timeline of fundamental discovery.
The clock is suddenly ticking.
And it's ticking loudly. The industry pillar is driven by the immediate existential need to create something that can be sold.
And to execute on that faster than the competition in order to secure that revenue.
You can immediately see the inherent systemic friction built into this model. Academia moves at the careful, methodical, often unpredictable pace of thorough research.
While industry is driven by the relentless, unforgiving ticking clock of quarterly profitability
And market share capture. An industry leader operating in that red box simply does not have 5 years to wait for a peer-reviewed paper to clear up some minor theoretical anomaly.
not if it means missing a vital product launch window.
Exactly. So the diagram places these two massively important pillars of society side by side, while explicitly pointing out that they operate on entirely incompatible operating systems.
And just to complicate things further, the framework introduces the third pillar.
Yes, the blue box.
The blue box labeled market,
Mm-hmm.
which represents you, me, and the entire consumer base. And it has the simplest and arguably the most uncompromising motivation of the three.
There is only one driver listed for the blue box.
Solve their problems.
That's it.
The market does not care how many rigorous peer-reviewed publications the university produced.
And frankly, the market does not care about the time-to-market constraints either, or the internal revenue targets of the industry.
No, the market has a pain point and it expects a functional cure.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the absolute brilliance of Dr. Mazlan Abbas setting up the diagram this way becomes apparent.
Because of what's at the bottom.
Right. Down at the very bottom of the entire graphic, there is a foundational line of text that reads, "Understanding roles and responsibilities."
That is the cipher for this entire framework.
It is. The foundational insight is recognizing that a producer nation isn't just a collection of factories. It is a system composed of three groups that have entirely different, inherently conflicting goals.
Knowledge, revenue, and problem solving.
They are not naturally aligned. In fact, left to their own devices, they will drift apart.
A true producer nation cannot exist unless these completely conflicting institutional motivations are somehow bridged
Translated.
and forced to work together in a synchronized engine.
So if we have these three deeply conflicted actors, academia, industry, and the market, how does the framework propose they actually communicate?
That is the big question, and that's where the diagram moves away from static pillars and transitions into a dynamic flowchart.
The lower half of the page.
Exactly. Below the boxes, we see arrows connecting R&D under the university to the product roadmap under industry.
This middle space is famously known as the Valley of Death for innovation.
Right, because how do you get pure peer-reviewed knowledge to actually inform revenue-driven product developers?
It requires a highly specific intervention. And the framework is very prescriptive about who has to initiate that contact.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the diagram draws an arrow that challenges a common assumption about how innovation works.
People usually assume the university just invents groundbreaking things in an isolated lab.
And then throws them over the wall to the industry, right?
Right.
But the first critical feedback loop in this diagram is an arrow pointing leftward, moving from the product roadmap of the industry back over to the R&D of the university.
And the label on that arrow is share industry problems.
That phrasing represents a massive paradigm shift.
Share industry problems.
Okay.
It means the red box is actively reaching across the divide to the yellow box and saying, we have acute market demands that we cannot meet.
We have specific practical roadblocks preventing us from engineering a profitable product.
Exactly. We need your deep, fundamental research capabilities to solve this specific puzzle.
It completely grounds the academic research. Instead of the university researching in a purely theoretical vacuum, this arrow provides them with a targeted real-world application for their pursuit of knowledge.
It fundamentally alters the starting point of academic inquiry in this model.
The university takes that specific industry problem, applies their pure scientific or theoretical knowledge to it, and then the flowchart shows the return path.
The arrow pointing rightward.
Moving from the R&D side back toward the product roadmap, it's simply labeled output.
But Dr. Mazlan Abbas doesn't leave it vague.
No, right below that arrow, the framework specifies exactly what that output must be. It is labeled prototype alpha.
The alpha prototype is such a vital concept to isolate here.
Because it's widely misunderstood.
Very. In the context of this specific framework, what does an alpha prototype represent? It is the raw, unpolished, barely held together physical translation of pure knowledge into a functional solution.
It's a proof of concept.
Exactly. It proves that the underlying physics work, that the chemical compound is stable, or that the core algorithm functions.
But it is emphatically not a product.
No. It might be a mess of exposed wiring on a lab bench. or a software script that requires a PhD to operate.
Right. It's the messy, brilliant core of the solution. The university isn't responsible for handing over a shrink-wrapped box ready for a retail shelf.
They're handing over the validated science.
The alpha prototype acts as the literal physical bridge between the yellow box of knowledge and the red box of revenue.
It's the university saying, here is the fundamental mechanism to solve the problem you shared with us.
Now, the burden shifts entirely to the industry.
To figure out how to manufacture it, scale it, and make it economically viable.
And notice how elegantly that satisfies both masters.
It really does.
The alpha prototype fulfills the university's drive for knowledge application and output without forcing them to become supply chain experts.
Which they aren't.
Exactly. And simultaneously, it gives the industry the foundational intellectual property they need to hit their time to market and revenue goals.
Without forcing them to spend a decade doing fundamental physics research.
It aligns their conflicting motivations through a shared asset.
Which brings us to the next critical phase of the blueprint. We move further rightward in the flowchart, traveling away from the R&D exchange.
Moving from the central product roadmap toward a new node labeled commercialize.
This node sits directly underneath the blue market box.
We are finally establishing the link to the consumer.
But before the framework allows the industry to just sell the technology, it introduces an optimization gate.
There is an upward pointing arrow from the flow right before commercialization labeled prototype beta.
It's worth noting how the diagram separates the alpha and beta phases conceptually. The beta phase here isn't just about catching minor software bugs.
Or just tweaking a physical design.
Right. It represents the exact moment the industry pillar fully asserts its time-to-market mandate over the university's knowledge mandate.
It is the brutal commercialization filter.
That's a great way to look at it. The beta phase is where the raw, functional alpha is subjected to the harsh realities of the market.
Because the industry has to take that lab bench prototype and optimize it for mass consumption.
This means stripping out unnecessary complexities.
Designing a user interface that the average person can actually understand.
Calculating manufacturing tolerances, sourcing cost-effective materials.
The beta is the process of translating the scientific solution into a format, the blue box the market will actually accept and pay for.
The industry is actively refining the product to meet that unforgiving time-to-market pressure without compromising the core science provided by the university.
It's a delicate balancing act of cost, speed, and functionality.
And once that beta commercialization filter is cleared, the diagram shows a bold, direct arrow moving straight into the commercialized node.
That outward arrow has a single definitive label, sell. This is the moment of truth in the framework. This is the exact point where the industry pillar finally fulfills its driving need for revenue.
The optimized product hits the market, the transaction occurs, and the red box achieves its primary metric of success.
But the framework doesn't terminate at the transaction.
And this is arguably the most insightful structural element of the entire Malaysia as a producer nation diagram.
Simply executing a sale does not make you a mature producer nation.
It just makes you a vendor.
You have to remember the blue box's overarching motivation. The market only cares about one continuous state.
Solve their problems.
And problems in the real world are rarely static. They evolve.
Constantly.
A solution that works perfectly today might be completely obsolete in 2 years.
Due to shifting environmental conditions, new competitive technologies, changing consumer habits.
I think that's why the diagram features an inward-pointing arrow coming from commercialize all the way back to the product roadmap.
It's the ultimate feedback loop.
And it is explicitly labeled maintain loyalty.
I'd push that even further. Maintain loyalty is a profound choice of words by Dr. Meslan Abbas.
How so?
Loyalty isn't just marketing spin in this model. It is the quantifiable metric that ensures the market's core mandate is continuously being met over time.
If the product degrades, or if the market's needs shift and the product doesn't adapt, the problem is fundamentally no longer solved.
And when the problem returns, loyalty evaporates.
Which means the revenue stops.
Exactly.
So this maintain loyalty arrow functions as a critical early warning system for the entire ecosystem.
It pipes market feedback straight back into the product roadmap.
It's the market telling the industry the solution you provided is losing its edge. The parameters of our problem have mutated.
And if the industry is functioning correctly within this framework, they take that newly mutated problem and they immediately route it right back down the very first communication loop we discussed.
Share industry problems.
Yes. They hand the updated parameters back to the university R&D to initiate the entire innovation cycle all over again.
It creates a closed-loop system of perpetual innovation.
It means a producer nation is never actually finished producing.
If the problem evolves, the product roadmap must evolve.
If the product roadmap evolves, new fundamental research questions must be generated and sent back to the university.
It is a living, breathing, macroeconomic ecosystem.
It constantly recalibrates itself based on shifting market realities.
It remains deeply grounded in fundamental academic research.
And it is driven relentlessly forward by industrial efficiency.
So, what does this all mean?
Good question.
Let's zoom out and synthesize this entire operational flow for you, because it is an incredibly elegant engine when you see the whole board.
It really is.
The blueprint dictates a continuous cycle. The industry identifies a real-world, highly specific problem from the market and formally shares it with the university.
The university applies their deep, pure knowledge to research the issue and outputs a raw, functional alpha prototype that proves the concept.
The industry takes that raw science, forces it through the commercial filter of beta testing to ensure it's economically viable, and finally commercializes it to generate revenue.
But instead of walking away post-sale, they rigorously track customer loyalty as a proxy for ensuring the market's problem remains solved.
Feeding any new friction points right back into the start of the machine.
That continuous, unbroken chain is the actual engine of a producer nation.
And we have to bring the analysis all the way back to that foundational text sitting at the very bottom of the diagram.
Understanding roles and responsibilities.
That phrase is the load-bearing pillar of this 2020 framework. Because when you map out this engine, you realize how catastrophic it is if any of these institutional players forget their specific roles.
Imagine a scenario where the university, the yellow box, suddenly decides they want to optimize for their own direct commercial revenue instead of pursuing foundational knowledge.
They might hoard their scientific discoveries,
Refuse to share the alpha prototypes with the industry.
and attempt to commercialize complex technologies themselves without the vital industrial expertise required to scale manufacturing.
The entire engine stalls out.
Or look at it from the other side. What if the industry, the red box, decides that funding academic R&D and waiting for an alpha prototype just takes too much time?
The pressure for immediate time to market is just too high.
So they completely bypass the university, skip the fundamental research phase entirely, and just rush superficial, poorly engineered iterations of existing products to the market.
In that scenario, the industry might successfully engineer a short-term spike in revenue.
But the framework predicts they will inevitably fail at the maintain loyalty loop.
Why? Because they haven't actually solved the market's core problem with a robust, fundamentally sound solution.
They've just applied a bandage.
And the engine breaks down again.
True, sustainable production at a national scale requires incredible institutional discipline.
It requires each distinct sector, academia, industry, and the consumer market, to stay strictly in their respective lanes.
They must respect their inherently conflicting motivations while simultaneously maintaining perfectly clear, continuous communication across those vital connecting arrows.
It really is a masterclass in systems thinking and economic architecture.
We've taken a deep journey today through a single, concise diagram tracing the path from the pure abstract pursuit of scientific knowledge through the messy, vital reality of prototypes, all the way to real-world problem-solving and the maintenance of market loyalty.
It's a lot to take in.
Thank you for taking the time to explore this incredibly dense blueprint of innovation with us. It profoundly changes the way you look at how modern economies function.
And it exposes the invisible, highly fragile partnerships required to bring any real, lasting solution into the world.
Absolutely.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, drawing straight from the mechanics of the framework we just decoded.
Go for it.
Look closely at your own professional life, your own company, or your own industry. Think about those three vital communication arrows that bridge the conflicting pillars.
Sharing specific industry problems with foundational researchers.
Successfully outputting an alpha prototype across the valley of death.
Or taking the rigorous time to maintain market loyalty by constantly feeding user feedback into your product roadmap.
Which of those three critical communication loops do you think is the easiest to break in your world?
Oh, that's tough.
And more importantly, how might that specific failure in communication be the exact thing preventing your own projects from truly operating at the level of a producer?
That is a phenomenal question to chew on. Where is the broken arrow in your own ecosystem?
Something to think about.
We'll leave you to explore that one on your own. Until next time, keep questioning, keep unpacking the complex systems around you, and most importantly, keep learning. Goodbye.